Mr. President of Iceland, ministers, ambassadors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I see that the Arctic Circle Conference has emerged as a key event for all those who think that something big and challenging is happening on the top of the world. I happen to have been involved in the very first discussions with President Grimson regarding the project on the establishment of an international forum on the Arctic. Having these early discussions in mind, I do have to say that President Grimson made his dreams a reality, and the result is even better than in his wildest dreams. So congratulations to you, President Grimson. You can count on my continued full support and encouragement. France and the Arctic is my subject. Thanks to its long-lasting tradition of polar expeditions and scientific explorations, France has received the observer status at the Arctic Council since 2000 and has ensured a regular participation in senior Arctic officials' meetings and in ministerial meetings and some working groups. As a shipping state and a fishing state, France is a potential Arctic user and a potential Arctic stakeholder. France has already economic and political interests in the Arctic, and these interests are likely to increase in the perspective of the expected economic development of this region. In November 2013, under my authority, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of France has launched an inter-services working group involving several services from 5 administrative bodies: Science Department, Defense Department, Ecology Department, Transport Department, Finance Department, which to tell you a confidential truth, were rarely inhabited to work together. And we call them to develop a national roadmap on the Arctic, a French Arctic policy, if you prefer, which is to be issued in March 2015, that's very soon. Diplomatic missions of France in Arctic countries, including for sure and naturally Iceland, have been asked to initiate consultations with foreign administrations in order to identify mutually beneficial opportunities of cooperation. Based on the large consultation of economic actors and senior scientists, certain will be there, 4 areas of work have been defined for the national roadmap of France on the Arctic. The first is identifying potential interests of France in the Arctic, concerning them defense, economic, science, and environment. The second is strengthening the legitimacy of France in Arctic fora and more generally in Arctic affairs. Third, promoting a balance between national interest and common interest in the Arctic governance system. It is a shame for me that all our national interests are so strongly and firmly described and presented, where there is no place where to formulate, to identify, and no one to defend the common interest in humanity in using correctly Arctic without polluting it. This is the third item, though. And fourth, promoting a sustainable and responsible development of this environmentally high-sensitive region with the full consultation of indigenous communities. While awaiting for the final results of the ongoing inter-services work, I would like to mention some economic, defense, scientific and political interests for France in the Arctic, already identified by the French administration. Economic interest. France has already some economic interest in the Arctic region and will benefit greatly from a forward-looking economic vision based on Arctic strategies issued by Arctic states. The main economic sectors at this time, which are of potential interest for our companies, are transport, local transport, transport for mining and hydrocarbon deposits, cruising activity, natural gas exploration and production, infrastructure, and space monitoring. Mineral resources, oil extraction, and commercial navigation are less attractive in a short-term perspective as a result of technological challenges, you all know this, high costs and risks inherent to the harsh environment in question. As far as fishing opportunities are concerned, there is presently no development project of new fisheries in the Arctic area. However, France is aimed at preserving its potential fishing interest under the exclusive competence of the European Union in the perspective of some new possible Arctic fishing activities. Then, defense and national security interest. From a defense perspective, France is concerned with political stability in the Arctic region for three main reasons. As a member of a military alliance, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, as a member of a political organization, the European Union, and its status of a nuclear power. According to the 2013 French White Paper on Defense and National Security, I quote, "The decrease of Arctic sea ice extent has strategic consequences, and the perspective of a maritime traffic along new polar sea routes is now approaching." In the end, as stated by our Department of Defense, the major interests for France in the Arctic region are primarily economic, environmental, and safety interest, much more than military of defense interest. Then scientific interest. As I mentioned earlier, France has a long-lasting tradition of scientific exploration and research in the two polar regions, the Arctic and the Antarctic, as is internationally recognized as a polar nation, indeed, along with many countries, Norway, United Kingdom, Russia, United States, many others. Our polar legitimacy is mainly due to our strong scientific presence in Antarctic and to a smaller extent in the Arctic, actually in Svalbard. A recent prospective led by the National Scientific Research Center, CNRS in French, indicates that France has no less than 30 public research laboratories and university departments with competences in various polar research fields: social sciences, glaciology, biology, geology, oceanography, etc., involved in several European projects and international programs on the Arctic. This network is now coordinated by the so-called National Arctic Network, led by the National Scientific Research Center and assisted by a steering committee, including public bodies like our French Polar Institute, IPEV. The National Arctic Network will be in a few seconds represented by Mr. Rousseau here. France has recognized excellence in polar scientific research, and this acknowledged excellence is a major advantage for strengthening the legitimacy of France in Arctic fora, mainly the Arctic Council, and more generally in Arctic affairs. And then political interest. The Arctic Council has become the major regional cooperation body dealing with Arctic circumpolar issues. This consultative forum doesn't wish to become a legally binding decision-making body, as you all know. Unfortunately, observer states' participation is still limited, and several important Arctic issues, for example, the issue of Arctic marine living resources management, are presently excluded from this forum. The Arctic Council has evolved favorably with the recent granting of an observer status to 6 non-Arctic states, China, India, Italy, Japan, Singapore, and South Korea. And thanks to a recent Canada-European Union agreement on seal hunting products, a long dispute. We expect that the European Union will soon be granted with the same status. The Arctic coastal states are committed to the principle that the law of the sea is the Arctic Ocean governance system. France, along with other indirectly concerned, believes that increasing access to the Arctic Ocean requires additional legal frameworks, notably as regards fishing and shipping, or cruising activities, to name a few. In this perspective, France is committed to promote a balance between national interests and common interests in the Arctic governance system, with full respect for Arctic coastal states' sovereign rights and national jurisdiction naturally. Let me conclude this brief presentation with an argument which is expected to considerably increase French and global interest in the Arctic. In September 2012, the French President, Mr. François Hollande, made the fight against climate change a governmental priority and announced France's candidacy to host the 21st session of the Conference of Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This candidacy was endorsed in April 2013, and the meeting will be held in Paris from the 30th of November to the 11th of December 2015. It will mark a decisive stage in negotiation on the future international agreement on a post-2020 regime. You should all wish good luck to this conference. In order to fulfill its responsibilities, France is gradually stepping up its contribution to the negotiations and has already one of the lowest levels of per capita greenhouse gas emissions of any other developed countries, except Iceland, probably. France is clearly focusing on a universal climate change agreement. We need to get a legally binding agreement. This is the first goal and not an easy one, I know, of the 2015 Paris Climate Conference. Afterwards, every country will have to make pledges. There will be also essential finance dimensions, such as the Green Climate Fund and carbon pricing. By the end of the COP21 meeting, for the first time in over 20 years of United Nations negotiations, all the nations of the world, including the biggest emitters of greenhouse gases, should be bound to a universal agreement on climate. From this perspective, the rapidly changing Arctic appeared to be a symbol or a sentinel of climate change, and, by a distinguished French of the Arctic, the preservation of the unique and fragile environment that is the North Circumpolar region will be strongly dependent on the success of the 2015 Paris Climate Conference. Global change in Arctic environment and Arctic environment, their fates are inextricably linked. I leave you with this last thought, and I look forward to seeing you in Paris next year for this crucial and historical work meeting, the COP21. I wish you a successful and productive conference. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.